Hola, ¿qué tal, amigas y amigos? Muy buenas noches, nuevamente aquí con ustedes. Gracias por aceptarnos en sus hogares y gracias por seguirnos en estos programas que son especialmente hechos para ustedes. Tonight, we have a very special man, somebody that goes around the world delivering messages of hope, of love, of consciousness, of many other good thoughts for our lives and for the lives of our family and friends. Today, then, we have here Señor Deepak Chopra. Deepak, thank you very much for being here with us. It's an honor for this program. It's an honor for myself. It's an honor for Vicente Fox. And thank you for being here.
First of all, President Fox, it's my honor, my privilege. It's a great opportunity for me to be here with you and explore human potential.
Where you were born, your childhood, understand in India. Tell us about that time of in last century. What was India all about?
So I am what is popularly called in India one of Midnight's children. Midnight in 1947, August 15, was India's liberation from British colonialism. When the great Mr. Nehru gave a speech where he said, "Today we meet with destiny, we have a tryst with destiny." I was born just before that. My father was an army doctor in the British Navy, actually fought in the Second World War. And we were brought up in Irish Christian missionary schools, but at home had a very, you should say, Hindu environment. In our schools, Muslims, Sufis, Parsis, Zoroastrians, Jains, Buddhists, and of course Catholics and Christians. So it was a very, very enriching environment, both culturally, both spiritually. We got a very good education. After that, I went to medical school. I qualified as a doctor, and then came to the United States after I did 1 year of internship to train as an intern, resident, fellow, training in internal medicine, endocrinology, neuroscience, and ultimately explored healing through consciousness.
But India at that time, a lot of poverty, and but also a lot of richness on the culture. You speak about religions, but India has discovered that over and above religions, which each one could be different and have different teachings, but there is something on top that is common and that is spiritual. How would you describe that in India?
India has a long history of, you might say, exploring the inner world of mind, the inner world of spirit, the inner world of soul. And this goes back to Vedic times, which is pre-Christian. In, say, 3000 BC, we had the Indus Valley civilization, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and what is now Pakistan, but then was, the Indus Valley. And you can see that this was a very rich tradition of what we call seers, sages, wizards, and they explored the inner world. Now, through many thousands of years, there were invasions. So you had Genghis Khan, you had the Mongols, you had the Muslim invasions, Islamic invasions, you had the British colonialism, you had the French, you had the Dutch. But what happened, very interestingly enough, that India absorbed all these people. It never resisted or fought. At that time, they had astronomy, they had mathematics, they had music, but all the explorations was by going inside. So, you know, you can see the world through the eyes and go outside, or you can go deep inside and you find the same thing, because what is inside is also the activity of the universe. Reality is inside you because the inside actually is what is projecting as the outside.
That's profound. That's profound. And a little bit about what our students here, our kids, people in general, when they hear the word India, they think about the Ganges River and the way they bath there and they have some sort of a baptism. The issue of the meat and the cattle, that you don't eat the meat, that they are sacred. All those things that our kids see here. Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, everything has a context, historical context. So in ancient times, the cow was the source of milk, and the cow was the source of agriculture and plowing the fields, etc. So it was a very valuable animal. Just like if you read the Bible, the valuable in the New Testament, the animal that is given a lot of importance is the lamb. You know, Jesus talks about the lamb all the time. His metaphors are about the lamb. And before that, it was camels. Ganges. Now, you know that in every part of the world, cities have been built around rivers, no matter where you go, including ancient Babylonia, you know, Mesopotamia. You see all the big cities, metropolises came around the Ganges. So the river became the metaphor of bringing nourishment in all its forms. And to dip into the Ganges is to cleanse yourself, not only in the body, but also in the soul, in the spirit. So all these rituals were metaphorical. But then, you know, when rituals get repeated, they lose their significance many times. People don't even know why they're doing the rituals. The Vedic rituals were a little different in that they were not prayers, they were invocations. Invocation means I invoke the energy of the divine in me, what you can call archetypes. So when I invoke the goddess Lakshmi, I'm invoking the consciousness of wealth. And you trap the energy, you bring it into your nervous system, and then you release it in your actions.
Neighbors, Tibet, Pakistan, influence in India and India's influence on them. Does that have to do with this spiritualism, or is
well, in the beginning, it was all one. You know, India had lots of little divisions. There were regional divisions, but the Indian subcontinent was one, including what is now Sri Lanka. It was to be Ceylon, but it was all under British colonialism, of course. Before that, there were small fiefdoms. When the British left, they made, as they did in many other parts of the world, they created artificial boundaries. And so when they created the boundary between India and Pakistan, a lot of the Muslims left India to go to Pakistan. A lot of the Hindus left Pakistan to go to India. When the Chinese came and invaded Tibet, the Dalai Lama left and he became a refugee in India. So India has this, you know, it's very interesting, by the way. India has never colonized any part of the world through military, ever. But it has colonized the world through its culture, through its food, these days through its fashion, through its entertainment, Bollywood, through its music, through its mathematics, but never through its weapons.
The image of the Taj Mahal is associated totally with India. What's the story of the Taj Mahal, that most magnificent building?
Shah Jahan was an emperor who was the grandson of one of the greatest emperors India has had. His name was Akbar. He created a very multi-ethnic multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, almost you might say religious but secular society. And Shah Jahan had this very beautiful wife, Mumtaz. They say she was the most beautiful woman in the world at that time, like Cleopatra, but the equivalent of Cleopatra. And she died at a very young age. So Shah Jahan built this monument, this mausoleum, where she was buried, and he would look at this every day in her memory. And it took like 30 or 40 years to build. It's in the most extraordinary
It's a story of
building.
love.
It's a story of love. And it used to be one of the 7 wonders of the world.
India, all of a sudden, becomes a modern nation, now competitive worldwide. But this change comes from the change into freedom and democracy, comes from intense education in promoting culture, comes from just the natural wisdom of Hindus, comes from the language. Some say that English is so well spoken that is part of the competitive advantage of the modern India.
It's a very interesting question and probably very difficult to answer. But you know, when the British left, India was still, you might say, pre-industrial. And Mahatma Gandhi actually was not in favor of industry. In fact, the reason India became independent was that India became self-sufficient through its handiwork, through its crafts, through its, you might say, cottage industries. So that was Mahatma Gandhi, and it was very successful. But as soon as India became independent, the first Prime Minister, who was actually, in a sense, Mr. Nehru, he was a disciple of Gandhi, but he did not agree with Mr. Gandhi on that India should still remain in the pre-industrial age. In fact, as soon as he became the Prime Minister, the first thing he did was, and I remember even as a child listening to his speeches, he says, if India has to have a future, we have to create IIT, Indian Institutes of Technology. So he created these IITs immediately after the British left. I am a product of that vision because I went to the institutions that he created. Silicon Valley is a product of that vision. Whether you go today to Google or you go to Yahoo or you go to any of the Silicon Valley places, the products there, the people working there, are the products of a visionary leader who was way ahead of his time. And he was also secular. He said, I will embrace, even though we have Hindi as the national language, we will keep English and Hindi on an equal power.
You mentioned that Gandhi was very close to the soil, to the very basic industries. And what would you think about maybe excess of humbleness like he had, humility, compared to Nehru, a visionary, pragmatic in a way, looking for development, material development, jobs, income. Would there have to be a blend among both?
There were people of history, you know, and the initial cabinet of Nehru was a cabinet of visionaries, of statesmen. They were not, in a sense, even politicians at that time, because they came out of a system which had to overthrow 200 years of British colonialism. And so they used everything. You know, they used the genius of Mahatma Gandhi, who on one hand is a saint, but on the other hand is a politician. But then you had Nehru, who was the son of Motilal Nehru, who was an aristocrat, you know, who was educated by the British, etc. So you said these were men of destiny.
Deepak, you have written many books in your life. Where do we start? Speaking about this consciousness, and from there we go to the values and all your teachings and how people benefits from that.
Everybody talks about body, mind, and spirit. I mean, this is the buzzword now. We have a body, we have a mind, we have a spirit. And yet, if you ask people to, what is the connection between this and what is the scientific basis of what you call the connection, most people will not even be able to define what that is. If you ask most people what is consciousness, they can't even define that. So let's talk about that. The body is very simple. I'm looking at your body right now, and you're looking at mine. It's solid, it's three-dimensional, it has a location in space and time. And we think of the body as a structure, but actually it's not. It's an activity. It's an activity. You're changing your body every moment through breathing, eating, digestion, metabolism, 5 senses, and even your thoughts are influencing your body. Furthermore, you don't have the body you had as a child.
I don't have the body I had as a
No, you don't have the body that you had as a child or as a teenager or even the one you had yesterday. You recycle your body once a year, everything. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and this material comes from the stars originally. So you are an activity of the universe. What about the mind? The mind is, where is the mind? You say, you know, it's in the brain, but if I go in the brain, there's no mind there. It's an activity, it's chemicals, electrochemicals. So even though scientists today say, oh, my mind is in the brain, there's no evidence for that. You know, your GI tract is full of neurons, your heart has neural activity. In fact, lots of cells in your heart are neural cells. There's no place in the body where there is no intelligence. Okay? Every cell is performing 100,000 activities every second. Every cell knows what every other cell does. So a human body is the ultimate multitasker. It can kill germs, remove toxins, make a baby, play a piano, think thoughts, all at the same time. Since this is an activity of the universe, you wonder if the universe is an intelligent activity. So, your body, your mind, and the universe is a single activity. And the intelligence that you have in your body is also the intelligence of the universe. So in our great tradition of Vedanta, we say the self of the individual is the self of the universe. If you go deep into your mind, and you go beyond the mind, you go beyond your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your memories, your imagination, you end up with a field of possibilities. You end up with a field of creativity. You end up with a field where there is the power of intention. But you end up with the field which also has what they call Platonic values, named after Plato in the West. So I use those words, Platonic values: truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, intuition, insight, imagination, inspiration, equanimity, but most importantly, self-organization. The universe is organizing itself. We don't do anything. Your body is organized by itself. We don't do anything. You're not making your heart beat right now. So the universe is a consciousness, a field of awareness, a field of intelligence. If you want to call it a field of spirit, if you want to be religious, the Holy Ghost. You are a spark of divine intelligence. And this spark of divine intelligence is the innocent, unconditioned, pure mind. When you look at a child has an innocent, unconditioned, pure mind. A child is playful. A child is creative. A child has curiosity, a sense of wonder, a sense of automatic connection to the world, love, both as giver and receiver. This is the unconditioned mind. And then what happens is we get influenced through cultural conditioning, economic conditioning, political conditioning, historical conditioning, sometimes ideological, religious conditioning. This takes the pure mind and makes it the separate mind. And the separate mind is the cause of all the problems, whether it's war, terrorism, eco-destruction, extinction of species, diabolical technologies, atomic bombs, biological warfare, mechanized death. The innocent mind, the divine mind, and combine it with science, I personally believe we have today the technologies to reverse climate change, to bring back extinct species, to repair the ecosystem, to find creative solutions.
It's possible because of technology, internet, or that's just an instrument for expanding the wisdom, expanding the capacities of human beings, expanding our love and our desire to serve others. Has to be both?
Has to be both, because what is the internet? It's the extension of our mind. What is the internet? It's the global brain. So I can send a tweet to somebody in Africa, and if I say something that's humiliating, his blood pressure will go up, his heart rate will go up, his immune system will get compromised. All I did was, send a tweet through my
picture.
Or not even a picture, just a sentence, a word. Okay? So your words have the capacity to heal, and they have the capacity to injure. They said first there was the Word was made into flesh. Well, now the Word is in cyberspace. In fact, we know from research that the #1 cause of conflict in the world is humiliation and lack of respect. So we have a global brain, we have an emerging global consciousness. What we need is a tipping point, a critical mass of people who are grounded in being, who are grounded in Platonic truth, not as an idea, but as an experience. And then the world will transform, because the world is a projection of our collective consciousness.
Your books, you have one about Jesus.
Yes.
And you seem to be a fan of Jesus. And
Big
then
fan
you
of
have
Jesus.
Buddha.
Yes.
You seem to be a fan of Buddha. So what's the common denominator? Because I see a lot of these boxes of religion that have many similar principles, but at the very end, common denominator. And again, we go to the cloud of here, to the universe, to the God, to you name it.
It's very interesting when you look at the great prophets and seers. They were under the sky. They were in the desert. Whether it was Jerusalem or even before that, Moses and the Jews, or in India, the shepherds. Jesus was a shepherd. Okay, Krishna was a shepherd. Muhammad was a Bedouin. They're all looking at the sky, they're looking at the universe, and they have a sense of wonder. So the common experience in all these people, there are only 3 common experiences, okay? The first is what we call transcendence. They go beyond what is called subject-object split. The conditioned mind is the separate mind. I and you, me and the universe. But the common experience of transcendence is I am an activity of the universe. I am an activity of the universe. And there is no, Meister Eckhart, the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. The Africans say, Ubuntu, I am because you are. In other words, there is no such thing as the separate self. It's an illusion. It's a socially induced hallucination. It doesn't exist. You know, this atmosphere is your breath. The earth is recycling as your body. The trees are your lungs. The rivers and waters are recycling as your circulation. The stardust is your body right now. So why do you call it the environment? That's your body. And it's your universal body. You have a personal body, you have a universal body. They're equally yours. You can't do one without the other. So there is no such thing as the separate self. And this is what Jesus realized. This is what was the great vision actually of Muhammad, of the Sufis, of Buddha, of the prophets, of the seers. We call it unity consciousness or cosmic consciousness or transcendence, common. The second was, as a result of this being connected, there was the emergence of a morality or sense of values that wasn't, oh, I have to follow the 10 Commandments. You know, whenever you give rules and regulations to somebody, they break them. It's like the police. Okay. Okay. You create laws, people will break the laws.
Prohibitions.
Yeah. So all prohibitions. Thou shalt not. Okay, instead of thou shalt. Which is there, by the way, thou shalt. To love. To treat your neighbor as yourself. Okay. To love your enemies. If somebody takes something from you, give him twice that. To walk the extra mile. This is Platonic truth. It comes from the experience. It's not a law, really. It's the way nature works. Okay? So that comes spontaneous morality. And the third thing, by the way, which is common to all religion, is the loss of the fear of death. There's no death in any religion. It's a transition. Okay, so that's a very deep understanding. You know, and today we are recognizing scientifically that death is what makes life possible. You have an identity which is beyond your body, which is beyond your mind, which is your core consciousness, which is your soul. That soul does not exist in space-time. And that soul is part of the infinite consciousness that governs, constructs, rules, and becomes the universe. So there's no death. It's an illusion.
Maestro, elevate myself. How can I start to reach up and reach the stars? Where do I start? I think I read something about Dharma.
About?
Dharma.
Dharma, yeah.
Dharma. I understand you speak about 3 very important things that we have to build in ourselves. I know the last one is be for your neighbor, be for others, serve. Is there this kind of steps where I can start growing myself from soil to spirituality?
Yes. There are 4 fundamental experiences we have as human beings. The first is being. Being. Existence. So being is no agenda. Just settle into the deepest silence of your own self. So the first is to transcend to the level of being. You're a human being first. Not a human thought, not a human emotion, not a human action, a human being. This is where meditation comes in. Okay, this is where self-reflection comes. Being is number 1, and we call it Raja Yoga, the yoga of meditation, the yoga of self-reflection, the yoga of self-contemplation, the yoga of transcendence. The second level of existence is feeling. Okay, so this is what we call emotions. There are two levels of emotion. One where I feel connected to you. When I feel connected to all of life, we experience love, we experience kindness, we experience joy. You know, we experience peace, we experience equanimity, we experience compassion, empathy. On the other hand, when we feel disconnected, and I'm disconnected, then we experience fear, anger, hostility, guilt, shame, depression. So these are the diabolical emotions that come when we separate ourselves from the bigger truth. That's the second level, feeling. The third level is thinking. But thinking not, oh, just for me, for me. Thinking is, how can I serve? How can I make a difference? Or thinking can be imagination, because imagination is the raw material of creativity. So that's the third level, creative thinking. And the last is action. Okay? But action, which we call karma yoga. Karma means action, and yoga means to be connected. These are the four yogas: the yoga of being, the yoga of feeling, the yoga of creative thinking, and the yoga of sacred doing, sacred activism.
Simple advice. How do I train who coaches me?
Chopra Center.
Global.
Global, with the Chopra Center with Oprah Winfrey Network.
Wow.
We had 700,000 people meditating every day.
So you start my process of growing. Where do I connect?
You can
global meditation. How do I connect?
ChopraCenterMeditation.com. ChopraCenterMeditation.com.
And I'm connected.
And you're connected to grow. And our goal is to have 100 million people.
Deepak, now, how do we build this better world in this 21st century, and hopefully as soon as possible, because we need in Mexico to reduce and eliminate poverty urgently. We need in Mexico to eliminate violence, drugs, crime that are really hurting the nation, and so many obstacles everywhere in the world. Europe in crisis.
So can I take a very brief tour of how we have evolved? Okay, so we have three brains. If this was a model of the brain, this looks like a brain. This is my spinal cord. This is my reptilian brain. 300 million years ago, this evolved. Reptile. If you go next to a reptile, it will attack you, or if you're a little further, it'll run. So it's called the fight or flight response. Then if you go here, this is the emotional brain. If it's healthy, it experiences love, peace, kindness, joy, compassion. When it's unhealthy, it's fear, anger, hostility. And it actually regulates your biological systems. That's why emotional distress will lead to sickness. Physically. It's regulated by the limbic or emotional brain. Then this is the cortical brain, which is responsible for everything that we call science and art, mathematics and language and science and technology, etc. This is 300 million years old, the reptilian brain, the dangerous one. This, all the problems, violence in the world. The emotional brain is 100 million years old. It's only found in mammals, not in reptiles. Okay? And the cortical brain is only 4 million years old. So from just an evolutionary point of view, the cortical brain is in infancy. The emotional brain is quite old, but because of a tribal mindset, it has created separation. And the reptilian brain is still functioning. It's, so when you say we have crime, we have violence, we have addictions, this is the combination of the reptilian brain and a dysfunctional emotional brain which override the cortical brain. That's purely science. Now let's look at the evolution of the human species. We started as hunter-gatherers. Okay, so the only way to survive was go out and kill. Kill an animal, bring it home, and it was a male activity, totally male activity. The woman, it took 9 months to nurture a baby in the womb, and then to nurse the baby, and the baby frequently died. So the woman was caretaker, but not given the importance. It was the male who became the chief, who became the tribal head who had to protect his tribe go to war. Hunter-gatherer. The next stage was the stage of agriculture. The hunting became less significant because people knew how to create crops and things like that. But then because there wasn't any technology, but the land was meager, the reptilian brain still fought for agricultural lands. And this happened, this is our history, whether it's in the Babylonia, or it's in the Indus Valley, it's in before the kings and the chiefs and all the colonialism. Only 300 years ago, we transitioned. Actually, the hunter-gatherer instinct hasn't gone. The agricultural age hasn't gone. It's actually now technology has helped the agricultural age. But when industry came, we developed industry, we found resources in minerals, we found resources in oil. And that industrial age became basically the trigger for colonization by those who had more power. Okay, it preceded the industrial age, but the industrial age actually made it worse. And only in the last 100 years or less did we move to a new age. We call it the information age. Okay, so even though the industrial age is still there and we're still fighting for oil, still fighting for energy resources, we also recognize that some of the wealthiest nations or the emerging economies are information economies. India, okay, it's an information economy. And the source of wealth has become a microchip, which is a piece of dust, piece of silicon dust, wired to give you information. But information by itself is just information. It's data. The information age has to transfer to the age of knowledge, which is what you're doing right now. I think the age of knowledge will soon lead to the age of wisdom. Okay, because knowledge is not enough. The future belongs to survival of the wisest, not survival of the fittest. And I say this very carefully also because wisdom also means embracing the feminine archetype. See, the masculine archetype, which was very important for us as tribal people, but the feminine archetype means beauty, nurturing, art, music, affection, tenderness, sensual experience. This has to be part of our future leadership. Imagine a leadership, I'm not talking about male or female, it doesn't matter, but embraces the balance of power, of nature, of wisdom, of beauty and sensuality, and of alchemy. Now we have a powerful combination of wisdom archetypes. That has to be the most important thing for us. Usher in the age of wisdom, because wisdom is the only criterion for survival.
Define wisdom. Do I have wisdom? A kid that is watching us has wisdom, or he has to develop it?
No, wisdom. Every child that is born is proof that God has not given up on human beings, because the child comes with the wisdom of the universe. The inner intelligence in you mirrors the wisdom of the universe.
Discovered by accident, you go within yourself, your parents tell you, in the school they tell you that we are almighty, that we have wisdom, that we have power within, that we have leadership.
That's one thing, but human potential self-organizes itself. You have to allow it to. So we give an education to our children which is information overload. Okay. I know from my own experience, I learned so many things that were unnecessary. Okay. And yet every child has unique gifts, unique talents, unique strengths. Okay? It doesn't matter what they are. If your child is good at playing tennis and weak at mathematics, don't get him a math tutor, get him a tennis coach. Then when he grows up, he might hire a mathematician to be his accountant. Okay? So first of all, everybody has strengths, unique gifts. It's easy to identify them. Secondly, to create teams that have shared vision and share emotional bonds. And you have to complement each other's strengths. So these are skills we need to teach our children. They're all learnable skills. How to settle in their own being so they can exercise their intuition and creativity and imagination. How to connect emotionally with other people. Okay. Now, I find that there are certain characteristics, by the way, that leaders share who are good, great leaders. You are one of them. But first is they are present. You can't be distracted. Second, you have to have true self-esteem, not ego-esteem, which is dependent on other people, but true self-esteem. What are your values? Where are you coming from? Okay? Are you dependent on the good or bad opinion of others? Are you coming from fear or are you coming from love? And third is, you have to be warm, you have to be friendly. You can't be, oh, I'm such an important leader. So if you have those characteristics, which are easy to teach to children, every child can be a great leader. Every child can be a visionary.
That you're using now for spreading the message, for giving the gift.
I think the last instrument is technology, the global brain, the tipping point. I personally believe that in 25 years, nation-state idea will be obsolete. We will be citizens of the globe and the planet and ultimately citizens of the cosmos. So we need to, even democracy, by the way, I think we're going to have netocracy. Global communities through the net, netocracy. Luminous stardust beings is our real identity. And I think it's going to happen. But we have to move. We have to see that technology by itself is neutral. It can destroy the world, it can heal the world.
Deepak, how do I say thank you?
No, thank you, President. Thank you, Mr. President.
No, gracias. Gracias for your wonderful presence in this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Y a ustedes, amigas y amigos, pues hoy nos deja muchos, pero muchísimos pensamientos, muchas maneras que podemos crecer como personas, cómo podemos ser para los demás, cómo podemos construir este mundo mejor que todos queremos, pero que de alguna manera todos hemos fallado. Todo empieza con nosotros y esta maravillosa capacidad de poder hacer cosas grandes, de soñar en grande. Pues los espero en el próximo programa. Muy buenas noches a todos ustedes.